Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever it is, wherever you are, welcome to Good Values Podcast. In this episode, I speak to somebody who I met in university, and although they were on a different course as far as they were doing a different discipline, they weren't on the fine art course, they were someone who I spoke to several times, I really got along with and valued their opinion and their personality. So I wanted to reach out to them, have them on the podcast, and I'm so glad that I did. They're such a nice person, a very talented illustrator and storyteller. So here is the episode with Hayley. Would you mind introducing yourself for the audience, please?
Yes, I'm Hayley. I am a children's book author, illustrator. I'm in the process, I've just completed my first book and I'm in the process of trying to get it published. And if I don't succeed that way, I will self-publish, which is a whole nother thing. I also dabble in music production, but I'm looking for a way to gel the two together.
Fantastic. If I can ask you a quick follow-up question is, what type of music production? Because I find that interesting.
I do electronic dance music production.
Oh, wow.
In a former life, I was a DJ and I did, which was another passion of mine. And I used to go all over the country DJing, and I had a lot of friends. I worked on radio, and now that our children are getting a bit older, we've recently come back together to collaborate on making some new music. So that's quite exciting.
That is brilliant.
When I go out and about, I like to draw people walking past, things like that. It's good for character development, I find. So yeah.
Excellent. What's your book called?
It's called The Little Moth That Lost the Moon.
Oh,
I've actually got a copy of it here. Here it is.
Oh, wow, that's fantastic.
Natural book.
Oh, that's lovely.
So yeah, it's at the moment I'm trying to get it published, but I'm on my 7th rejection letter. So I actually did a TikTok about it. It was quite funny, where I'm dancing in the middle of all my rejection letters on green screen in the back. So it's quite funny trying to give people, I think you'll find, especially on all different platforms, everybody is so focused on success. Look what I have, look what I've done, look what I've achieved, but nobody really shows the failures.
Yeah.
So I wanted to celebrate rejection and failure, and it's because it is a process and it's part of the achievement.
Yeah.
So that's why I posted that.
No, it's good. I think that's an important thing to do, and perseverance is a real virtue to have as anyone in any kind of practice, whether it's artistic or not. But yeah, you have got to have a thick skin, haven't you, to get through these rejections and things. Big
time. They're always the rejections are always pleasant, don't get me wrong, but because the publishers I send to, it's very difficult when you are a debuting author and also author illustrator. There's not many of us around who write and actually illustrate the books too. So the normal premise of how you would send a form in is to either send a manuscript or send your artwork, but the lines are very blurred when you send in both. So that was difficult to navigate. But like I said, we're getting back to the point. The letters of rejection are always very pleasant, but they have a lot coming in, obviously, so they can't give you any feedback, which I know they would probably love to do, but there's just such a volume that they can't. So it is frustrating as well, because you would want to know, well, why and what can I change? How can I improve?
Yeah. Well, is this the first story that you've written, or have you got a history of writing stories anyway, and then this is the first you're trying to get published?
Yeah. Sorry, it lagged then, and I didn't see.
I've been noticing that a couple of times actually.
Did you ask if this was the first story? Do you want to repeat?
Have you been writing stories? Have you got a history of writing stories, and this is the first you're trying to get published?
So it started way back when I was younger, and I entered a creative writing contest and I won it. This is primary school age. And then my mum always said, you know, you should write books, you should write books. But I always just wanted to draw. And then as I've gotten older, it's something that I really, really enjoy. And I've got lots and lots of stories, but this is the only one that I've sort of brought to fruition and illustrated also. All the other stories are mainly just manuscripts at this point. So yeah,
that's really interesting. Well, so you've written a lot of stories. Are they always like children's stories, or have you written different demographic?
I've written, the bulk of my stories are generally children's stories, but I have started to, with being friends with comic artists, have started to sort of go into that realm and just see if I can develop my writing further for a wider, older audience. So I'm experimenting with that. But I haven't had the guts to really show anybody that work yet. But it will come in time when I've polished it up a bit more, because that's half the battle, writing a story and then letting other people read it, because you can judge straight away by the facial expressions, everything, if it's going to be a good story or not, which is I like to do all the time with the children's books, because you need to know, like I have 2 young boys, so I constantly read it to them and they give me feedback, and they also tell me which bits they really liked, so I can develop it around that way. But with the adult side of things, and especially not having that creative sort of person who's older, who's regularly available to be like, oh, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? Because my partner is not creative in the slightest. He's not interested in anything creative. He's really happy that I do it, and he's happy that I'm passionate about it, and he'll always be my biggest cheerleader in that form. But really, I can't sit and talk to him. My brother, talking about family and growing up, so my dad always was drawing, but he was in the army. My mum, she loved the music and all things like that, but nobody took creative futures in that sort of element. They didn't think it would be a career or anything like that. And it's very interesting because my brother is actually a set designer now, and he lives in Australia. He just worked on the Thor film, the new Thor film that just came out. So yeah, he's very creative. I'm very creative. And then my other brother is a school teacher, so an English school teacher. So
oh, brilliant. So yeah, set designer. So that must be interesting to get some behind the scenes stories and things from like what his process must be, or things like that.
So he is when he's doing a film, he won't even tell you what film it is, because he obviously has to sign NDAs and everything like that. But after the film is out, we've yet to have a conversation, because it took me so long to get to go and see it, about all the ins and outs. But I can't wait to have that conversation with him, because I think it would be quite fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I always admire set design in films, so it is something where I like them, the different things that make up the films that you watch, and appreciate how they create an environment and an atmosphere. What do you value about
art? The freedom within it. There is no boundaries to art. There's no, even though there is rules with certain colors, the actual process, how you have this, idea in your head and how it's processed onto whatever sort of materials you're using, or even if that's digital, canvas, paper, any print even, and that's something that's really attractive, and a really attractive quality to art. Because I've done a range of jobs, but art has always been a constant. I'm always thinking when I'm doing the other career, when will it stop? Right, this long before I have to go. There's no real passion, but with art, it's completely different. I would never even look at a clock. I'd think, oh my God, the only probably time is like, oh my God, I'm running out of time because I have to go and do something that I'm responsible for.
Yeah.
So in that way, it's very freeing. So yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I have to eat. Oh, so annoying.
I know, exactly.
I know what that feels like.
Yeah, especially when you get into this flow, and it takes when you first start producing stuff, it's like, but then you're in the zone, and when you're in that zone, nothing can get in, and nothing's going to intrude on that time there, and you're focused and you're doing it, and you're producing these beautiful images. And it's only when that, you come out of that and you step back and you think, wow, look what I've done. It's like you're not even part. It's just like you become this thing that's all consuming. I think, oh my God, like, how has that happened? It's like almost out of body experience for me anyway.
If I could ask the flip side of the art value thing, what is it if you were to walk through a gallery of, say, either old art or like a modern exhibition, what is it you value about other people's art?
Mainly just the expression that they've, or mainly also points that they're trying to make. I do like conceptual art that makes you think, but anything from down to the use of colors, the thought process that's gone into it. I really just admire that process and how they've created this artwork. And I always like to stand there and think, what were they thinking when they made this? What were their feelings? What were their emotions? And I think that's not, and sometimes it can be presented in the artwork, but sometimes it's another part to art that's quite mystical, I find.
Oh yeah, okay. Because there's the illusion of
no, go on.
I was just going to say the illusion of a complete idea from the first step. Usually you see an artwork and you think, how did they envision this? And usually artists make discovery in the process, don't they? And they kind of tweak and develop things as they're painting it, as opposed to it being everything's finished in my imagination, now I just need to make it. And that's the illusion that the audience has. I think the viewer assumes that, that this piece of artwork was just conceptualized and then it was produced. But that's, as far as I'm aware, that's never the case.
No, it's. I wish that was the case sometimes. Honestly, from typically making a book is a huge. I know it's a different type of art form, but it's a huge process. And how, if I look back to the first images I did, which I think, oh yeah, they're great, and that's what I'm going to go with. There is so much to think about. So much to kind of take on board. And the end result is, what do I want this viewer to feel, think, know, learn? And that's one of the hardest parts, I think, trying to get that message across. But in the next breath, it's nice and refreshing for me to go to a gallery or an exhibition and see work where I think, they don't want me to take anything away from this. They just want me to stand there, view, and enjoy what's in front of me. There's no reason, there's no rhyme. It's just simply enjoyment. I like those types of art also.
Yeah, just having the experience, isn't it? Just engaging someone in something a bit more, would it be numinous, or just something which is kind of like more of a feeling than an intellectual engagement can be really valuable. The other thing is, you've kind of talked briefly about writing stories when you were young, but how did you get started in the practice of art making? Because I've seen the illustrations that you do now, and they're very professional and very they're beautiful. I love your color palette and everything. So how did you get started in developing this type of style?
It was a long process. It took it was just trial and error. So I would I just draw things and think, no, that's not good, or yes, it is good. And then 9 out of 10 times at the beginning, when I thought something was good, I'd get critique on it and it would be like torn apart. So then and in a good way, because it made me grow. So I thought, right, I have to develop. I had to really think about what I wanted to do and where I wanted to be. And I knew that children's books was at the forefront of it. So then I looked and collected lots of children's books. I mean, I have every shelf on here is covered in children's books. And I'd go through them, I'd look at the illustrations, I'd look what was expected. And then I'd go away, and as I briefly mentioned earlier, the best way to sort of inspire myself for character design is to go out and about and look at people watch, and then draw them. So I did that for a while, and then I'd choose one of the people that I'd drawn, and then I'd develop them. And then I'd add things. So I'd think of a story in my mind and then add things to that, and then it would just come along. Color wise, I've always, not to sound like, oh, but with color, I don't know, I've just always been able to know what, yeah, I don't know what, I never really learned that. I think it was just from being younger and always drawing, coloring, used to color everything, and anything that, even newspapers, I would color in. And I have a distinct memory of having a Crayola crayons and using them that much that they'd be little nubs. I remember that. And I remember if I'd lose one, it would be like the worst thing in the world.
No. Beautiful. I love the kind of faded colors, so it's nothing too saturated. And I really like when colors are what I refer to as more restful on the eyes, as opposed to something more bold and striking. And I was going to say to you about when you mentioned evaluating your own work and saying that's not good. I really value that, and I try to highlight that on this channel in my own videos, which I get support from viewers, which is very sweet of them, but they see it as me being too hard on myself. And I'm trying to instill in an audience, you'd like to develop that hard on yourself attitude, because then you strive for improvements, you look for things which aren't quite making it and why they're not. And I was going to ask you, what are the things that you notice in your own artwork where you think that's not good? Do you know of examples? Is it things like dynamic gestures, or is it composition, or what are the things that you remember noticing?
Well, firstly, just touching on what you've just said, it's a very fine line, because you don't want to be one of those artists who, when you show people your work and they say, oh, it's good, you go, oh no, it's crap. I know a lot of artists like that, and it's hard to learn how to take a compliment. And even though the people that you're showing it to might not know about composition, color, and they're just looking at it as an overall image, so you think to yourself, well, really it's terrible because I know this is bad and I know that's bad, but to them it's good. So when I show people work, I take and they say, oh, I really like this, I'll say, oh, thank you, because I think you have to take that on board, as well as the negative thoughts that you have. And something that struck me, the reason I started changing this way is I was in art college and I was doing my foundation degree. This was years ago. You're talking 15 years ago, maybe. And I was doing work and the tutor was coming around. It was life drawing. And he came over, he says, oh, I really like these lines. And I said, oh no, it's terrible, it's awful. And he said to me, don't ever put your own stuff down, your own self, your own work, because there's a lot of people in life that are ready to do that for you. And to me, that was so poignant at that point, because I thought, oh my God, that's so true. There is so many people waiting to hate, and you see that with the online and social community, ready to tear you down. So it is a fine line of how to know and how to not be too critical, but you do, like you said, you are definitely correct. You need that. You need to be able to know when something's not working. With me, when I start to lay down an illustration, I sort of know straight away if it's going to be bad, but I'll continue because I want to see where I can take it, even though it started bad. So normally with the lines, I can tell with the lines of my work if the image is going to be either too wooden, if there's going to be not enough if the composition is going to be off. And like I said, I used to just go into that and keep going and keep going and keep working it. But now that I'm getting, more, I'd like to say professional at doing the process. If something's not working for me now, I tend to just stop and go on to the next thing. It was very hard to do that, but I have an actual example on my Instagram. So I'm doing this drawing challenge at the moment. You might have seen it with there's prompts.
Yeah.
There's one that's I think the prompt was dancing hamburger or something like that. Yeah. And I hate that illustration that I've done and I've put on there. It's too wooden. The composition isn't right. The characters, you can't, apart from their face, their body language isn't really working. But I thought I'd put it on there because I wanted to see what the reaction would be to putting that on there. And to gauge if I'm right, if, I know when something's wrong. So if I go on to here now, we'll see what the likes are compared. So that one got 28 likes, that one, which is the one I obviously hate. And the other ones that I've put on there are like 53, 60, etc., etc. So that tells me that my thought process that this is wrong and this isn't working was correct.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that you need validation from other people. Like you said, learning that things are wrong and being critical will make you a better artist, but there is a fine line. And show your bad work also, because you want to show growth and you want to show like, hey, I don't always get this right every time, but I'm trying and there is progress.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it is really important to recognize that. I think it bugs me. It's a bit of a pet peeve when people say just practice, because I don't think practice is nearly enough. I've seen people who I love to bits, but I've seen people who draw a few times every week and get no better, and they don't know why. And because no one will teach them, because everyone's scared of saying this is right, this is wrong, they don't improve. Some people need prompts. I don't know. It's something which I think is very valuable to teach people how to recognize, as you said, when your character is showing an emotion, but the body language isn't, then it's not communicating fully the potential of, dynamic movement and action and things like that are quite, if the audience can recognize that without being necessarily artistically trained, then it shows you from your feedback that that is something which they can see. So I think that's really good. You have talked about briefly about inspiration from the public, which I love. I used to do a lot of going out and sketching people in public. I love the shadows that collect on people's jackets and things like that. I just used to point out and get weird looks from people going, what? So I was like, look at the shadow on the trousers there. It just looks amazing. But what artists do you have any specific artists or writers who you say, this is someone who is direct inspiration for me, or if I'm ever in a bit of a slump, I can read or browse through this type of illustrator's work, and I know that it will inspire me to create characters?
Yeah, so I do actually. We'll just get it out there. This is a very unpopular opinion, but I love Eric Carlisle, The Very Hungry Caterpillar.
Oh,
because and I'll tell you for why I love that book. I'm going to get some examples down.
Yeah, do it.
As you see, my plethora of children's books up here. Right. We've got some. So yeah, Eric Carlisle, whenever I'm feeling like stuck, like my work is rubbish, like it's not on track, I like to look at that book, and it's just fresh, and I mean that in the way of it was so, for back when he did it, it was so out there because it was textures and collage, and very simple, simplistic ideas. And I like to look at that because it does inspire me to think, right, go back to basics. Let's start from a simple color palette and a bit of collaging, and let's see what we come up with, or a bit of texturing, and we'll see which way to go. The next person I really admire is Stephen Lenton. Now, I don't know if you've heard of him. The book actually that I have of his is in my son's room. He illustrated a book called Octopus Shocktopus, and it actually just landed in the top 4 for across the world for books taken out of the library. And that it's not just a children's section, so that of all the books, so the adult books, the children's books, the fiction, non-fiction, everything. So it landed number 4 on that list because it's and the illustrations are just beautiful. He's just a really incredible.
Oh, I love it. That reminds me of the it's called The Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack. Have you heard of that?
Oh, no, I've never. No, I'd have to have a look at that.
It's great. I love that. That's cut out characters as well. It's got loads of texture all over it, and it's beautiful little charming characters like that image that you showed me with all the characters on a blue-grey background. Yeah, similar to that. So The Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack. I'll send you a link if I can find one.
Oh, thank you. I'd love to see that. This actually was written by Julia Donaldson, which everybody knows for the Gruffalo. But this is I'm going to sound terrible because I can never pronounce the second name, but it's Sarah Ogilvie.
Yeah, Ogilvie.
Yeah. And again, with this book, that it's just so free, and the lines are beautiful, and the composition and the backgrounds. So if we look at the fence there,
I love that.
It is a stroke. It's a stroke, but it looks so beautiful. This is called The Detective Dog.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, it's great. And I have many more examples, but that's just a few of them.
I love it.
Yeah, another inspiration for me is Oliver Jeffers.
Oliver Jeffers.
Oliver Jeffers, yeah, he did a really great. The first time I ever heard of him was actually I went into Waterstones, and I was looking for a new book, not only for me but for my boys, and I found this one called Here We Are, and it's the story that he created when he had his first child, and he wanted to explain the world to him. And is it a her? I think it's a him. And it's just beautiful. It's about who we are as people, where we all are, how the world works, inside the body, the planets. This is I have got it in the other room, but I'd have to go and get it.
Yeah.
And it actually made me very emotional because at the end of that book, it says something like, and when I'm not here, there will be lots of other people around, to help you. And I just thought it was so lovely and such a great way to explain things to children. So when I first read that book, not only was the story beautiful, the illustrations are just incredible. There's an underwater scene, the way he expresses planets and movement within that, and just the scenes are just lovely. So another great illustrator there.
Well, it looks like your inspiration have a similar color palette to your work as well. So I'd like to ask you about your color palette. Do you have specific colors that you like to use, or is it just more of a pastel sort of approach to applying color?
So when I first start laying down colours, when I do the line work, I'm always thinking of, what colours I could use. And I'll usually start with a background colour and then work up from there. Obviously, all of my artists that inspire me, I do look at their colour palettes and think, right, how can I incorporate that into my work without sort of, stealing color palettes off other artists. So what I tend to do is I'll just have a play around with the colors. I'll see what works best. What makes my colors quite pastel-y is I use a gouache, which is it will take any sort of color and it will just be, so it waters it down to a degree, and then you can build that up or you can take it back down. So I like to start building up color, and sometimes I'll use different color on top of different color to make new colors. And so color palette wise, I'll have an idea in my brain and think, let's see if it works. And if it works, great. But sometimes it doesn't work and I have to start from scratch. So it's good to just look at inspiration and think, right, those colors look nice together. How can I make that my own?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it always depends on the style and what message you're trying to convey. But I like to keep things light and quite free, because at the end of the day, I'm doing children's illustration and I don't want, even though the dark tones are nice, I want it to be inviting and but not too sensory over, like a huge sensory overload. So within my book, there is a page that's quite has a lot of color. So because it's a book in the night, can you see that big light bulb?
Yeah.
So because it's a nighttime book, it came up with all different colour issues, as you can imagine. But there is one page, if I find it, there's this one which is quite, so I have the orange there, texture, and then the blue, and then I'm trying to find this colour. This page,
like an octopus that'd be straight out of Adventure Time or something.
Yeah. See, and as an artist as well, I don't think you realise that when you are doing. So I have this page, which is where he's trying to find a light source, obviously, and he sees a car headlight. I'm like, yes. That's probably as deep as I'll go.
Yeah.
But it's.
What were you saying about, as an artist, you don't realise you were partway through?
I was about to say something.
Was it that because I'd said about the Adventure Time similarity with your?
Yes. As an artist, you don't realise that everything you consume and watch, you are taking on board subconsciously, and it is filtering into your sort of artist process, because your brain, if you're creative, your brain is always learning visually. So you will take that on board, and you will an inspiration that you might not have seen as an inspiration, like for instance, you watch Bob's Burgers or Adventure Time or any of these animations, and then you could do a character and think, oh yeah, that's given me Adventure Time vibes, or that's given me this, that, and the other. And it's also, that is great, but it's also scary as well, because you don't want to be too
you don't want to plagiarize, do you?
You don't want to plagiarize, absolutely not. So the thing that's worrying is if I send people work and they'll go, oh, it reminds me of this. You don't want people to look at it and think, oh my God, that reminds me of such and such. Elements is fine, but not, oh yeah, that's really reminds me of this sort of image. That's a no situation. But you can't help that being a creative. It's a visual journey, and it's that's how you learn. So
to create a whole new design it's unreasonable to expect someone to do that, and it'd be quite challenging for an audience to say, right, we've got something that you've never processed as characters before, because we've created this whole new shapes and patterns and way of approaching personality. I don't think that's necessarily what anyone aspires to. It's more, I like that I've got my own world that I could make around different parts of different places and things. So I do think that you're right, that inspiration comes from all sources, and it's just to try to not grab too heavily from one specific place. Just to make sure that you are inventing your own kind of world, I suppose.
Yeah. And there's a Disney Pixar film called Soul. I don't know if you've seen
I
that.
haven't seen it. I've heard of it. I've seen the trailer.
Yeah, it's really great. But there's this point where all the little souls go up to sort of the source or heaven or whatever you want to call it. And there's these creatures that come out that sort of look after all the little souls, and the way they were designed and developed is just incredible, like nothing I've ever seen before. Really? And I actually watched the making of the film and who designed it, and their process was incredible. And it to see something that's completely unique and is so out of the norm is also great as well. But to get to that point, I think you have to be really confident in your own style. And developing your own style is one of the hardest things to do as an illustrator. I'm not sure how it would work with sort of well, I suppose it's the same if you look at a Van Gogh, it's a Van Gogh. If you look at a Picasso, it's a Picasso. So illustrators, it's the same. Like my friends can look at my work now and know that that's my work.
Yeah, that's good.
My style. But before getting to that point is so difficult because you just constantly putting ideas down, then trying to develop it and trying to shape it. And when you don't realize you've got your style until somebody says to you, oh, that's your style. That's really, I can really see that's very you. And you're like, oh, is it? Have I got style? And my tutors at uni would constantly be saying at the beginning in year one, they'd be like, right, we need to get the style locked down. We need to get your style, And then by sort of end of year 2, year 3, I was getting into my own style, and they'd say, it had moved from we have to get your style down to like, oh yeah, this is definitely, you can see your style across all these different pages of work. So it's growth, but that is the hardest part, is finding your own style.
I always ask every guest these questions. These are questions that my art mentor would ask me every day that I'd see her, and I'd see her almost every day for a year. And I see them as very important questions for every artist to consider. And some people love them, some people hate them. Not many people hate them, but I've asked professionals these questions, and it's amazing the people who reject the question. It's just interesting to me. So the first is, what's the most beautiful thing you've seen today?
Oh, interesting. I'll tell you what it was. I was on the school run and I was dropping my son off, well, both of them. And there was a little girl and she was grabbing onto the school gates and didn't want to go into school, and she was hysterical. And the teachers were trying to get her fingers, peel her fingers from off the gate. And her mum came round and went on the other side of the gate. So she wasn't putting herself right there with her. She was putting herself at distance from going behind the gate. But she went at eye level with her, and she says, you're going to be okay. School is a lot of fun, and we'll have such a good conversation about all the things you did when we get home. And slowly her fingers just uncurled from the gate, and she just became so relaxed. And it was just such a beautiful moment of how the trust and the connection between the mother and child, it just emulated all that. And it was so lovely. And it was that lovely that I'm going to draw it later. You're like a kid screaming at the gates and the mother being there. Yeah, it was just a lovely moment.
That's fantastic. You see, that's a question which some people have rejected because they just don't. I think some people don't like the superlative of most beautiful. I think that's what they're like, I can't come up with the most, and that's the pressure. And other people, what I find interesting is some people will say sunset or the sky or birds, and they're all completely valid. And I love that. I love that yours was a story. With you being a storyteller, yours is a
Yeah.
story.
Yeah, I suppose. I look at I mean, I went on a dog walk today and there was loads of beautiful things, but they are beautiful, but it has to catch me. Like you look at the trees and the scenic views and the houses, and there's loads of like chocolate box cottages all around where I live, and they're lovely, and I do think, oh, they're beautiful. But for me, moments like how I've just described there, those moments, those singular moments that nobody's really looking at but happen, they're the most beautiful things to me.
It's real humanity as well. It's development of a young mind and a young child into going into a scary place and really being brave. So that's beautiful. I love that. Thank you. And the next one's a double barrel question, and it is what do you like and what don't you like about your own artwork?
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, but I love this question.
Okay, I like the color. We'll start with the likes. We'll start with positive. I like the color, and I like the imagination behind the idea and what it produces. I like how I develop characters, and they're not maybe the usual perception of what that might be, but they are to me. So I like that. Dislikes. Have you got a list? Have you got how long have you got on this podcast? No, dislikes. I think that my characters and some of my subjects aren't as free, so they're a bit wooden sometimes. I don't like the use of my line work at the moment, so I'm trying to develop that a bit more. I don't like, let me think what else I don't like. I don't like when I finish an image, it's very hard to know when that image is finished. And what I've been trying to do is just put it out there anyway, even though to me it doesn't feel finished, because I need to stop trying to perfect things. Sometimes some of my best work is when it's not perfected and I've not polished it too much. So I'm trying to really learn that. It's always a learning process. That's about it.
No, that's really good. I really appreciate that, because I can easily give a list every time of my dislikes for my own work, and it's harder to come up with likes for me because I'm one of those artists, like you said, that has learned recently to take a compliment as opposed to it tapping into my insecurities, which is overwhelming. But I think that's really good to share, and to know that you have that means that you're analysing and criticising your own work, which is, I think it's a real mature and healthy professional practice to have that ability to evaluate your own skills, I suppose. So I appreciate that. And otherwise, is there any social media that you'd like to promote now at the end of the episode?
Yes, I have a few actually. I have Instagram, which is Hagar, but you'll have it's a weird spelling, so
I'll put the spelling up on the screen as you're saying.
And then I have my website, which is www.hagar, and that's just one word, .co.uk. There's information about me on there, like the About Me page, and different things that I do. I'm also about to start a blog on that, so that should be interesting. And this is gonna be a journal of how the getting into your book published, how that goes and how that works and how hard it is, and it's going to have the pitfalls and all the drama that comes along with it. I also have a TikTok account, which I forget the name of it. And this, although there is a bit of art, that's hag_art also. Although it has art things on there, it's it's mainly about there's all different things. Like the header is mother, illustrator, and pretend adult. And then it says I do children's books. So there's a vast array of different things: life hacks, parent hacks, art fails, little videos. Yeah. So that's more personalized. So if you're not interested in my life in a whole, then no, don't follow that one. But art wise, definitely Instagram.
Well, I'll put all the links in the description as well.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you've missed off, by the way? I don't want to interrupt.
No, I don't think so. I think that's it all.
And if I could quickly ask, why hag art?
Well, I was I was looking for a name for my website that would be catchy and shorter than my actual name. And I decided on shortening it. Now, in reality, my middle name does not begin with an A, but I've taken on a pseudonym.
Yeah.
Is that the right word? Of Olwyn, which is with an A, which is just giving a nod to the fact that I'm in Wales and that I'm part of the Welsh culture now and how beautiful this place is. So it's Hayley Olwyn Griffin, so HAG for short.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I really appreciate you coming on as a guest, and I'd love to have you on again, especially after your book is published, and to tell us how it's going. So please come back on again. It's been lovely talking to you and catching up again. And,
yes, thank you for having me. You've been a great host.
I appreciate that. Well, it's been lovely catching up with you, so thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Simon.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, that's the episode done. Now, I thought that was really nice. She was a great conversationalist. I found it so easy to talk to her about different topics, and I could have spoke to her for another hour or so at least, but I'll definitely have her on again, especially when her book's published. And I look forward to seeing her new work and anything else that she comes up with. I'd really like to hear her music as well. That was an interesting bit of information that I hadn't foreseen beforehand. I wasn't aware that she had that background. So I look forward to hearing a bit of that. And I just hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you did, then please look at the links in the descriptions below, because support her on different social media platforms and check out her website. It's really nice. I've had a look at it on there and it's great. Her work is beautiful, as you've seen in this episode. So please go and support her if you can. And if you like the episode, then please leave a like, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, ring that notification bell, and I will see you in the next episode.